So hello to you from beautiful Slovenia, Lake Bohinj in Slovenia, where I've just been doing a swimming challenge with some old school and university friends. It's 10 degrees in that water. It was very cold indeed. We just did 2 kilometres. We swam from here to the other side and then back again. Pretty cool. Anyway, today I am going, today's piece is called PayPal, Toby Young, Bitcoin, culture wars, and the separation of money and state. So, as I've said many times, as I'm sure you all know, Bitcoin was built in reaction to all the money printing that went on in the wake of the financial crisis. The Times headline, "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks," was even embedded into the very first block in the blockchain, the Genesis block. And here was a money system that nobody, whether government or hacker, whatever, could print or debase. The rules were set in code, the inflation rate was clearly laid out, and the system, rather than rely on trust, whether in central banks, payment providers, government, whoever, instead it was based on mathematical proof and computer power. So here is an apolitical, censorship-resistant, trustless, hard money. And we saw a very good use case for it this week. Journalist Toby Young, who is associate editor of The Spectator, has, for as long as I've known him, been setting up organisations to try and help improve people's lives. He was disappointed with the lowering of standards in schools, and so he became one of the founders of the first free school in West London. In 2020, he set up the Free Speech Union to help defend people threatened with cancellation. And his news and commentary website, The Daily Sceptic, was born in reaction to all the misinformation and censorship, especially by big tech, that emerged during COVID. Now, Young's views, he's actually quite moderate when you speak to him. He's an old school, centre-right conservative, but his ideological enemies do not like him at all, and they work tirelessly to bring him down. And he's lost something like 5 jobs because of what he calls offence archaeologists digging up things he said decades ago, quoting them out of context, and then being offended. So last week, PayPal, as I'm sure you know, out of the blue, closed down his personal account for breaching its acceptable use policy. Then barely a few minutes later, it shut down the account for his news and commentary website, The Daily Sceptic. And then a few minutes after that, it closed down the accounts for the Free Speech Union. Now, this is no small disruption, and it undoes the many hours, the days, the months and years of hard work his team have put in building up their subscriber bases. Now, about a quarter of the Daily Sceptic's donor revenues arrive via PayPal, according to Young, and a third of the Free Speech Union's 9,500 members pay their dues via PayPal. And these are Young's words now. He said, "I did some Googling and I discovered that numerous organisations and individuals with dissident political views have had their accounts closed by PayPal recently, particularly on the 3 issues you are not allowed to be sceptical about: the lockdown policy and other COVID restrictions, the mRNA vaccines, and the climate emergency." This is all Young's words, and the Daily Sceptic frequently publishes on those subjects, and the Free Speech Union may have fallen foul of another taboo, which is defending people who've got into trouble with HR departments for expressing their gender-critical views. So this is me back now. How is PayPal able to do this without warning? Because it can. Young's by no means the first. It did the same thing to WikiLeaks in 2010, probably under pressure from the US government, about whom WikiLeaks was disclosing unwanted information. the US government hated WikiLeaks, and unfortunately this backfired because donors began using Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin WikiLeaks received rocketed in value to make WikiLeaks an incredibly rich organisation, assuming it managed to keep hold of those Bitcoins, or some of them, which I gather it did. Did the same to Alex Jones. Earlier in the year it cancelled academic and biologist Colin Wright for articulating his criticisms of the view that sex is a social construct. And then just this week it cancelled Us For Them, a parent group which campaigned to keep schools open during COVID, and so did another group called Gays Against Groomers. Now, PayPal founder Peter Thiel is an outspoken libertarian and probably on the same philosophical side of the argument as Young, but he's also a businessman. PayPal will do whatever is asked of it in order to survive. You can be sure of that. In order to survive as a business and effectively become a challenger bank, especially early in its evolution, it will have had to demonstrate that it could not be used as a vehicle for any kind of illicit activity, especially money laundering. And this is why PayPal can be really, really stringent. It will toe the line wherever necessary. But Thiel's no longer PayPal's CEO. Like so much of big tech, what started out one way is now not on board with the free speech ideals, the anti-censorship ideals of its founders, and that's evidenced by all the censorship that goes on. Indeed, more and more evidence is growing that big tech, especially Twitter, is censoring content according to the instructions of the US government and other governments. Loads of people are coming out about this now. A number of prominent individuals have spoken up in favour of Young, however. Lord Frost, Joanna Clary, Luke Johnson. It's received a load of letters from MPs, and a lot of people have closed their PayPal accounts in solidarity. So I think Young's accounts are going to get reinstated under pressure. But the moral of the tale remains. You are using trusted third parties that can no longer be trusted. If you use government money, non-government money, i.e. Bitcoin, the taps can't be turned off quite so easily. So, more than anything else, in every book, in every column I've ever written, I've argued for one thing, which is the separation of money in state and state. And when one body in a society has the ability to create money at little or no cost to itself, it is inevitable that that body will have disproportionate power and influence within the society. And if you're looking to understand how it is the state in Western societies has grown to be so enormous, something like 50% of GDP compared to the 10% area occupied at the turn of the 20th century, then look no further than our system of money. If you want to understand the inequality gap, why young people can't afford a house, all that, look no further than our system of money. It's starting to rain. If you're looking to understand why Western families are so small, look no further than our system of money, in which government now owns more than 50% of your labour. The primary reason given when asked why people have small families is that they can't afford bigger ones. Both parents have to work. Government, at over 50% of everything you ever earn, is your biggest cost. And it's only the very bottom, on large welfare, and the very rich who can afford big families. 90% in the middle can't. And so in the UK we import our youth from abroad and then we wonder why British culture is being eroded away. It's the same across the West. Of course, some states are more benign than others. Our 21st century social democracies, for all their woeful waste, are preferable to many of the governing systems found in other more tyrannical corners of the earth. But the damage has still been enormous, and we now seem to be careering towards a far more nefarious destination. Money should just be money, a means of exchange, a store of value, and a unit of account. Instead, it has become a tool of government, a weapon of government. Whether it's suppressing interest rates to boost the housing market, printing money to bail out banks, or the entire economy during COVID, freezing the accounts of political enemies, truckers in Canada, or the entire country that is Russia. Finance is being weaponised. And governments weaponise money because it is an easy tool to get the results they want quickly. It's a lot easier to sanction Russia and freeze it out of the banking system than it is to go to war with Russia. It's a lot easier to cut off the truckers in Canada, cut off their funding, than it is to confront them. And it's a lot easier and quicker to print the money you need to bail out the banking system than it is to collect it directly in taxes, which is what rulers from another age would have had to do. It's a lot easier to suppress interest rates and collect the inflation tax than it is to impose direct taxes or rein in spending. But the net result of all of this is that money gets debased, the state grows, it's empowered, and the inequality gap gets bigger. Freedom is eroded, families get smaller, nobody can afford a house, and yet more government becomes the answer to everything. More government is always, the solution is to add government somewhere else. So you get top-down diktats instead of bottom-up growth. One decision up top counts for way more than the aggregation of millions of individual decisions from the bottom, and so on. Now, the weaponisation of money, it's long since begun. The irony of such actions is that, as with WikiLeaks, they will accelerate the adoption of censor-free, non-state alternatives, of which Bitcoin is the most prominent example. America, by confiscating Russian dollars and freezing it out of the banking system, will accelerate the creation of a non-US international system of money to be used by nations, especially Russia and China, that do not want to be beholden to the dollar. Now, in the long term, it may backfire, but in the short term, it works. It shuts off the funding taps and creates considerable hardship and inconvenience. So, what to do? I've got to go because everyone's going, so I'll finish this interview from another place later on today. So, sorry about that, but we are back. I'm not quite sure where we are, but there seems to be some kind of war memorial behind me. Now, what to do? Now, I use PayPal all the time, whether as a buyer or as a seller. It's convenient, but I should really switch to another payment processor. The others may not be as censorious as PayPal, but they will be if pressured. You can be sure of that. Don't leave large amounts of money with these companies, especially not with PayPal. And as we head into a cashless society, we are even more vulnerable. And this is why the prospect of central bank digital currencies, which, by the way, are almost inevitable, technology is destiny, it fills me with dread, because programmable money will give the state even more control and influence. Your every decision can be monitored. Your every purchase, it puts it in Orwellian surveillance state level. Certain transactions could simply be outlawed. You might not, for example, be allowed to buy or sell to certain bodies that aren't government approved. Taxes and fines can be deducted without your approval. You know, in your utility, they bill you the wrong amount in your utility bill, and it's such a huge fight to get the money back. Imagine what it's going to be like getting it back off the government, off HMRC or the IRS or someone. Central bank digital currencies are going to give huge scope to behavioural economists and the various ministries of nudges around the world, and you'll be goaded into all sorts of decisions you might not otherwise have made. Social credit systems can be imposed. Are you a good citizen? Then you get the favourable rate of interest, you get the goodies, the good loan deal, whatever other incentive. Do you articulate wrong thought on the internet? Did you have the vaccine like we told you, or did you not have it? Are you suggesting that there is no climate emergency, that it's not real? Then you will be given less favourable rates. And if you're a really naughty boy, your account might be frozen altogether. Now, I hear that the European Central Bank, and perhaps even the Bank of England, they already have the tech ready to go for CBDCs. They're just waiting for the right crisis, the right emergency, and I don't imagine we're too far away from that, given everything that's going on. And in this sort of a world, and that does seem to be where we're heading, there is a very strong use case for Bitcoin, and I urge you to own some. You don't have to buy large amounts, just a little bit. Familiarise yourself with the tech, because you might be glad of it. If you want to buy physical gold and silver, I mean, it's unlikely you ever use as currency, although who knows what's going to happen with China. But consider the Pure Gold Company. I've got an affiliation deal with them. I'll put a link somewhere in the comments, and there's a guide to buying Bitcoin on my Substack. I'll put a link either in the page or in the description. And thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and sorry about the change of location, but I'll be back with another video very soon. And thanks for watching, and goodbye from Slovenia.